Welcome back to Boss Uncaged podcast. I think it's safe to say we have an industry legend on the call today. Um, when he came on the call, I kind of did like an inside joke, even though this is the first time we met each other. And I called him, I was like, hey, the Klubercator. And that's just kind of a clue of what we're going to be talking about here today. So, whoever I'm like interview, I like to give them a particular nickname. So the nickname for this boss is going to be the Integrity Boss, because that's what he's really about. It's 100% about integrity. So the floor is yours, Jeffrey. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit more about you and what would you like to talk about today?
Well, first of all, thanks, man. I appreciate the color and the nicknaming. One of my dear friends, Shaquille O'Neal, he's famous for giving people nicknames, and so I appreciate that vibration. Listen, I'm a simple guy. I love my wife. I love my kids. People say, "What do you do for a living?" I wake up every day. I figure out how to deserve my wife and kids. It's hard work, and it's all worth it. But so basically, I get out of bed and I help people, and I'm a communication guy. So if you think about any problem under the sun that's ever existed and you keep peeling all the layers of the onion, you're going to find it's a communication issue, right? So I've decided to consider myself a soft skills guy. I help people. Soft skills make strong leaders. Soft skills make strong teams. Soft skills make strong cultures. I've got a master's in communication. I'm an unretired professor of communication now. I'm back at my alma mater, San Diego State. So life is coming full circle for me a little bit. Also, bonus, my son is a freshman baseball player on scholarship at San Diego State. So to be back on campus where I got my degrees and met my wife, and I'm teaching and giving back. I'd taught for 20 years consecutively, but then coaching, consulting, training took off. I was going around the world for a little while and I had to get out of the brick and mortar classroom, retired, then COVID, and things have come back around. So I've self-published some books. I do some speaking, I do some keynotes, I do soft skill development for organizations, and I'm Professor Klubeck as well for a couple of classes now. So that's what's happening with me. Pretty simple guy.
Yeah, pretty simple, nonchalant, but obviously there's way more layers than that. So I think the first thing that you came off with, and it's something that you talk about in your classes, and you take pictures with your students, and they're holding the sneaker. So I really want to know the story behind the sneaker Shaq thing. I want you to kind of break down like what is that whole thing with you and Shaq? Because you guys have like this unsung friendship that's been going on for a long time. So what's the whole thing behind that?
Oh man, how do I do this succinctly? Look, Shaq. Shaq and I were like a month and 2 days apart. So first of all, right, and that means that we were both growing up when like cable TV hit, right? Like we were going from three channels over the air with bunny ears and the wires and the tinfoil to like cable. Boom. What 30 something channels and MTV and the movie channel, HBO and Showtime. We were like young kids when all of that stuff was happening. Anyway, so the movies would come to cable TV, and in the summertime you didn't drive yet, you were a kid, so you'd watch like Rocky 3 like 50 times in a summer, right? Or I mean when Animal House came out. I don't know if you know the movie Animal House. So the it's from Animal House, and there's a point in the frat party where Otis Day and the Knights, they're playing the song "Shout." You make me want to shout. And during the breakdown, now wait a minute. In the breakdown, they flash over to the keyboard player, and the keyboard player says, "Yeah, yeah." He just fills that space in the breakdown. And so, for some reason, at a Laker game many years later, I started to yell out at the space at the breakdown of the national anthem after Banner Yet Wave. I'll say, does that Star Spangled Banner Yet Wave? And right when it hits, I yell out, yeah. So Shaq, and I was doing it before Shaq became a Laker, but when Shaq was traded or signed by the Lakers, they do a preseason game in San Diego every year. And me and my buddy, we got tickets really close to the Laker bench. I'd got the tickets before Shaq even was a Laker, but sure enough, and I went to do the and Shaq, just like he was covering his mouth. We were making eye contact. We were close down, for a preseason game. And it turns out me and my buddy, we had an opportunity to get season tickets that year. So when we started going up to LA for the games that we would go to, it was important to get into the building in time to do the So it became this thing like Shaq really digs that. And it's silly because you can't tell a whole lot of people. It's like, yeah, whatever, dude. But sure enough, every time I'd try to get down as low as we could, we would shuck and jive past the ushers and try to get as low as close as we could to make sure Shaq could hear during the national. And I would yell out, yeah. And Shaq would always look for it. And it became a thing over time. And so year after year after year, from the Forum to Staples, and they started winning championships and all the good times. It was an incredible run that, Shaq and Kobe and the championships, the whole thing. One day after all these years of doing I ran into Shaq in Vegas. I'm like, hey, I'm the you're the guy? And I'm like, yeah. And he says, you're my good luck charm. I'm like, what? So Shaq has been believing, apparently, all of those years that I was his good luck charm. I'm like, well, whatever. It's just fun to be connected with you on some level. There's a vibration there. I think that spiritually, I think Shaq knows how gifted he is. I think he knows how fortunate he is. I mean, he didn't like stand in the 7-foot line. That just happened. He didn't be like, oh, I can choose to be 6 feet or 7'2". I'll go choose. We didn't. There's a lot of things that we've all been given that we didn't necessarily choose, right? To transition into something more substantive, right? Like there's God-given gifts, but then there's self-generated gifts, and then there's gifts that come from other people. And Shaq is just a gifted dude, and I think that he was raised right, and he understands giving back. Like is popular and as relevant, as famous, as wealthy, or as flashy as Shaq may be. If you do your research, I don't know if there's a more generous person on the planet. I don't know if there's a person that quietly and secretly does more for people. And it's only getting started. So you heard it here first. I think Shaq could be president of the United States in a couple cycles down the road. I wouldn't put that past him. I think he's capable of anything, and I feel fortunate to have been connected with him. And it's not like we talk every day, but it was a special experience. And I would tell the story to my students every semester. I would bring the shoes into the classroom, and it was a big deal, and Shaq has stayed relevant, incredibly relevant all these years. So I love Shaq, and Shaq loves you. And there's more I could say about it, but that's the thing. It was this random nonverbal. And there's more I could say about it. Like what a healthy venue, sports, live sporting events. What a healthy place to yell and scream. Yeah. There's so many unhealthy places to do it, right? But we all have energies, so there's so many good things. And so fan is short for fanatic, and I was embodying that. And Shaq is he's a superstar of, by, and for the people. He knows that he doesn't make a dime unless there's people buying the gear, filling the seats, etc. And I just think he's got a mature awareness of gratitude, and his gifts, and lightning in a bottle, the way that we connected. And I hope we do stuff in the future, but I've never forced it. I've never asked him for anything. I said stay healthy and dominate. And he did fly me to Miami one time for game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals. That was a trip. But aside from the surface stuff, what's really going on with Shaq is he's just a light bearing soul. He's one of the good dudes. I don't know how to express it. He's gifted. He knows he's gifted. He's grateful. He's committed to giving back. He balances the work hard, play hard. He's got a jam-packed schedule, super relevant. I just love him. And that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, so I think, kind of spinning off of what you said, I think one of the things that you are so inclined to be doing is talking about goals, right? So you kind of directly gave Shaq a goal of becoming president, and you had made a statement one time about no goals, no coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I want you to kind of like talk about because again, I think like coaches, sometimes they just look for the money and they try to coach the uncoachable, right? And then there's the other side of successful coaches that they have stipulations on how they're going to coach, why they're going to coach, and that's all part of their formula. So I want you to kind of talk about that no goals, no coaching.
Yeah, it could be a valuable conversation. It could be worth paying money for, but don't call it coaching. In my lens, through the lenses that I see it through, unless there's a goal, like it's, I was goal-based, attainment-based, achievement-based. Now, there's arguments to be made here. There are other types of coaches. Like when you take coaching, you slice it. There's executive, there's group, there's private, and then you vertical specific. There's marketing coaches or health coaches or nutrition coaches or swing coaches. You could break it down and break it down and break it down, right? And there's some argument to be made that no, coaching could still be coaching. There doesn't have to be a goal. It could just be skill development. And to me, it's like, well, how would we know? What are we measuring against, right? What gets measured gets done. So for me, I'm a results-based coach, right? I could do psycho emo. I could do transformational. I could do checkup from the neck up. We can go there. right? Yeah, I'm very empathic. I got all the communication skills. I understand the drivers of your inner psychology and how the word choices give me access to the limiting beliefs and all that stuff. But like, what do we want to achieve? Right? If we changed, if we transformed, if we best version of self. I don't like these vague, cliche, empty, meaningless terms that are out there, right? So what do you want to achieve? And then once you get somebody focused on a goal, like, okay, let's set goals. Then what we know about goal setting is first of all high achieving individuals share the quality of goal setting. But second of all, we also know that 97% of the population fails to set goals. So we're not talking about a hope or a wish or a dream. We're talking about what by when. What do you want to achieve and by when do you want to achieve it? And so as soon as you begin to make it measurable in a certain amount of time or specific, so to lean on SMART goal setting, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, but when I learned SMART goal setting, I was thrilled because that was the only goal setting I knew when I learned it. But I quickly realized, are you ready? If you want to have fun with this one, I learned what was dumb about SMART goal setting, and I've set out to make SMART smarter. We can talk about that in a second, but the first thing at a high level is when you start to get, and I like S for specific, I like M for measurable, and I like T for time. I even like A for achievable, right? But here's what happens when you get to the M to make it measurable. What's the measure? That's where the ego will come up and sabotage and make it vague and wishy-washy because the ego doesn't want to run the chance that it could fall short. So the ego is so afraid of that it'll sabotage, or it'll be a run-on goal. It'll be like, I want to achieve this and this and this and this so that I made this, so that it because I'm by the, it's like, well, what is it? Right. So, most people benefit from having an external calibration source, if you will. Right. And so SMART helps, but the key also too is like the A for achievable. How do you know if a goal is achievable? Right. Well, either, if it's humanly possible, or like if we believe we can. Henry Ford says whether we believe we can or believe we cannot, we're right. So one of the things that we do when we're working with people on their goal setting is we'll ask the question, what's the greatest thing you could achieve in the next 3 months in this area that needs to be different, whether it's your personal life, usual suspects, health, relationship, finance, or your business, usual suspects, marketing, sales, operations, finance. There's usual suspects. We know what people in businesses need. It's easy, right?
Yeah.
But the hard part is getting people to commit to the measurability of it all, the believability of it all. We want to know what's the greatest thing you could achieve in the next 3 months. But I have a concept that I've worked out with people called the threshold of belief, right? Where I want to inch people up to the threshold without going over, because we always behave consistent with the belief. So if we don't screen for belief, do I believe I can achieve this? If we're not testing, challenging our belief systems, right? I don't want to forget what the Kardashians are doing or keeping up with the Joneses or what the magazines tell me to do or what the social media tells me to do, right? Deep down inside, do I believe I can, right? Because if I believe I can, that doesn't mean I'm guaranteed to. It just means I'll behave in that direction. If I do not believe I can, I'll behave in that direction. We always behave consistent with our belief. Every behavior is preceded by a belief. Right. So if I'm looking at time as money, I'm going to go quick. If I'm looking at patience as a virtue, I'm going to go slow. So, when we're screening for achievability, it's really important. Right. And people have a hard time figuring this out on their own. I love the example when it comes to goal setting. Like, imagine if I'm doing goal setting, let's say a talk on public speaking, I'm doing goal setting. I'll find the real estate agent in the room. Who's the real estate agent here? And somebody, all right, how many deals did you do last year? I'll go fast on this one. 12. Okay, great. 12. Good. Most agents only do 1 or 2. Good for you. You're on your way. What's your goal this year? 18. Okay, awesome. 50% increase. All right, pretty ambitious. Do you believe you can do 1,800? No. You think you can do 19? Well, yeah. Do you think you can do 450? No. Can you do 20? Can you do 100? Can you do 21? Can you do 67? Can you do 22? You see what I'm getting at? And I'm working with this person, and ultimately 25. No, that's more than half. No, I think 24. 24, we found the threshold of belief. Mm-hmm. Makes sense. But they were left to their own devices. They said 18. But when I asked them what they really believe, they believe they could do 24 if they got lucky, if some things worked out, if they hustled, if refer, whatever. But they believe they could. So then I get to ask, well, how much money do you make per deal? And if they said take 10 grand, then I just made them 60,000 more dollars, maybe even 40,000 more dollars, maybe even 30,000 more dollars by holding them accountable to what they really believe. Mm-hmm. So when you goal setting is important to understand versus hoping, wishing, and dreaming. Goal setting is important to understand for achievement or results-based coaching rather than anything that might be considered woo-woo or hard to grasp or hard to measure or intangible, all of which I consider to be valuable. I just still you do all of that to support the goal achievement. Mm-hmm. But then within a decision to make sure that coaching is goal focused, now there's work to do on setting the goals. And then the other mistake that most people make on goal setting, which is why I thought SMART was dumb and why I wanted to make it smarter, is because the R was for realistic. And I was like, well, didn't we just cover that with achievable? If I believe it, that's my reality. So how much more realistic can it be than I believe in it? You follow? So I thought, wait, that's kind of redundant. And then the other problem I had with it was with that criteria, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, in a certain amount of time, I could say my goal is brushing my teeth twice a day for the next 30 days. And that would be a SMART goal based on that criteria. But hopefully I'm already doing that. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't have to change my behavior in order to brush my teeth twice a day for like I'm already so you understand the finish to this sentence is what I'm getting at. Doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result is
I know exactly where you're going.
Insanity.
Insanity. Yeah.
It's crazy. So I added an A for ambitious, which means when you're goal setting on my watch, we're going to be clear about behaviors that need to change in order to achieve this goal. So that's what people really need real coaching for, is to change behavior to get the new results. Make sense?
Yeah.
Because if you're not willing to change behavior, then I almost would rather call it entertainment than coaching, because it's a valuable conversation, maybe worth paying for. But what's the difference? Are you being entertained? Right? Or are you going to change behavior, change results?
So I mean, collectively with all that, I mean, you're kind of like borderline. You're not only changing philosophy, you're also changing mindset, and there's a psychology in what you're doing. I want to kind of like flip this on the other side of the coin, right? I mean, obviously you have 3 kids. You have AJ, who's playing baseball right now.
Yeah.
You have Abigail, who's a hell of a salesperson from what I can tell. You have good old Brody, right? So
yeah, wow.
With these three kids that you have, and considering who you are in the business world and in the education space, how does that then transpire into your kids, and what do they perceive that you're doing for them in the long run?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's bittersweet to answer it, because I think I'm going to have better answers for you 10, 20 years from now. You know, I was joking with we saw some old friends last night, friends that were like the dinner group. You know, we were the first one to have. So AJ was the first. So among our couples friends, where we would rotate once a month and cook a dinner at somebody else's house and all go and enjoy once a month together. AJ was the first kid crawling around. So we all got together last night and they couldn't believe it. Like, oh my God, look at the kid. So anyway, we were joking that one of the lines was you're going to think the older you get, the smarter you're going to think I am. Mm-hmm. That whole thing, right? Because sometimes they hear the voice of clean your room. They hear the voice of do your laundry. They hear this disciplinary transactional voice. In the moment, this transaction stinks. I don't like it. I don't want to, and so we pray a lot, right? That we've done enough transformationally, but the proof is in the pudding, right? So where I would love for my son or my daughter to just come up to me unsolicited and say, Dad, listening to your coaching calls all these years has really given me the ability to ask really good questions. Or Dad, seeing you up at night or getting up early in the morning has really given me a work ethic. Or Dad, I'd really love for them to just unsolicited tell me what I've done has made a difference. Yeah, I was talking with Marianne the other night, my wife. I said, hey, one of our greatest achievements as parents is getting AJ to a Division I scholarship and admitted to her. And she immediately is like, well, he's the one that did it. And I'm like, look, I'm not saying he didn't do it. Of course he did it. I didn't say it was only our achievement and nobody else's. But if we don't stop and understand what an achievement it is to, like, raise a healthy kid, keep them out of trouble, get them off to college, and especially, like, this whole D1 athlete thing is a real neat milestone to be proud of. But with Abigail, she's already tested out of high school. She's passed the California high school proficiency exam. She's got an agent, Hollywood. So, like, they do have a goal focus. They have a goal orientation. They're about, what do I want to achieve? What do I want to achieve? How do I get better? How do I take classes? How do I develop skills? How do I get to practice? How do I manage my calendar to be where, like, my son, it's Thanksgiving break right now, and he's hitting, and he's going to go see 2 hitting coaches today. Or no, he's going to work out and go see a hitting coach in his own time. I mean, we don't have to tell him to do it. Right. So I just, and it's not just me. I'll tell you something else. Like, this is the greatest thing. My wife is analytical. So she's spreadsheets, and she's data, and she's systems, and she's corporate. And so I'm emotive and empathic and entrepreneurial and communication. Right. So it's like they draw from both of us. I always promise my wife, I'm like, I don't know how we're going to do, but we'll have great kids. Opposites attract, and then compatibility is the issue. That's a marriage. That's the work of a marriage. But wow, have we been on the money with how incredible dynamic the kids are. And it's not as direct. It's not verbalized. There's still a lot of pushback, a lot of, I know, a lot of, they're coming of age as teenagers, and right. So I'm going to be patient with all of the expressions of it all, but the proof is in the pudding. We're doing something right.
Well, I mean, I think it goes back to, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if my numbers are off, but didn't you guys just celebrate an anniversary like 2 days ago or something like that?
No, well, you know what? It's interesting that you say that. Your research is intense, man. I'll tell you what. The first time I kissed Marianne
Mm-hmm.
was November 19th, 1991.
Mm.
That's you picked up on that somewhere. Your research is incredible. Yeah, but our actual wedding anniversary is September 15th. So, but the first time we kissed, that's something that I'll never forget, and I have made mention of publicly. And I wear my love for my wife on my sleeve, and my gratitude. And I married up, and it's a wonderful thing to reflect on. I'll never forget the moment, the first time we kissed. And we were young, we were kids. I was 19, she was 18. We were at San Diego State University. We didn't know anything, and we had a long road ahead of us because we were that young, and we were going to grow some codependency, right? And so we've had to work on psychology of love, psychology of relationships, and we had to break up for a while, come back together till death do us part. And it's marriage is work.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's 1991. Do the math. 32 years ago. It's the first time. 32 years in 2 days. Plate tectonic shifts and volcanic eruptions and fireworks, and you don't forget, my man. Marianne is something else.
Wow. Wow. So, I mean, obviously, I kind of like this building up this historical facts, right? I mean, you're talking about your kids, but again, you and your wife have been connected at communication levels for about 32 years. And I want you to kind of talk about like your upbringing. And I know, unfortunately, that your parents died about 3 years ago in the
Yeah.
same month. So I want you to kind of talk about how did they influence you? And obviously, I know that's a turning point to not only lose one parent, but to lose both parents in the same month. How has that affected what you do moving forward?
Yeah, it's you won't mind me taking a breath here. There's blessings and there's curses. I'll tell you, let's just start with the blessings. I mean, 54 years together they were, right? And they neither of them had an imagination for taking one breath without the other. And you hear these stories about, well, once one President Carter's wife just passed the other day, so we can expect he'll be like, all right, I think I can mail it in now, and there's I got chills all over my body, like when you dedicate your life to and with another human being, and the family that you can build, and the community that gets impacted by all of that, the ripple effect. Yeah, I used to. It's like Carl Lewis. Remember Carl Lewis, the sprinter,
Yep.
100-yard dash? Well, when he wins that race, he takes the victory lap. He doesn't go back and run it again.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, there's a victory lap in the romance of a union that's 50 plus years, what have you. Like, there's something super beautiful about that. And then, we make coping easier with humor. I feel like one of the things we use humor. And so BOGO, bury one, get one. Instead of two different ceremonies, 2 years apart with all the misery in between, we just changed the date on dad's and pushed it back a couple weeks for mom. And so like it was kind of like it's I don't mean to be like petty, but one of the reasons I'm so driven is because my parents, while they were, they loved each other, they gave me a lot of confidence, they got a lot of love, 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 love. My parents didn't teach me a lot about finances, entrepreneurial. They didn't go to college. There was things, that I've had to make peace with as an adult, wishing my parents would have done, right? And at some point along the way, and I hope I'm doing a good job, but at some point, I'm like, I'm stop wishing what they would have done and just prove to them what they did do.
Mm.
Which is they raised a kid that people are going to want to do business with, invest in, hire, promote, raise, hang out with. They want to crash my class, not the other person's class. So I remember the first time, like when I almost had to drop out of school as a sophomore at San Diego State, because I remember when my mom told me, Jeff, we don't have any money for tuition, so you either got to figure it out or sorry. And so I went the next day to tell I have a hard time telling this story without tearing up. I went to the next day to tell my boss, hey, I got to let you know I'm not going to be a student in the spring because we don't have tuition. I don't know where I'm going to go home and deliver pizzas. And the next day, he takes me to lunch with his boss, and they start asking me all these questions. What's your situation? I'm like, what's going on? And they said, well, first of all, if you drop out statistics, you're probably not coming back. What a waste. Like you're a really cool kid, and what a shame if you go deliver pizzas. But second of all, we don't want to lose you. We change you. We like you. We want you here. But forget that. Like if you drop out at all. So if we lent you the money to be a part-time student, you could still work for us the 20 hours a week.
Oh.
Could you pay us back $100 a month for 4 months straight? If we give you 400, will you register as a part-time student for $371? So I was like, wow, that was heavy. And I'm like, I don't know. I went home and I called my mom, and it was a tough conversation, really heavy conversation. I was 19 years old. I said, hey, they want to lend me money to keep me in school. And she's crying. She's crying. She's crying on the other end of the phone. Like she's so upset she couldn't do it. And I don't know what happened. And this is the part where I choke up, but something came to me. And I said, hey, don't be upset that you can't do it. You have to be proud that you raised somebody that others want to invest in. These guys want to keep me in school. So you did that. And so, a lot of life is, there's a lot of milestones in my life where mm-hmm. I've been gifted with the opportunity to prove people right.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of borderline going back to like your nickname and the cover of one of your books is The Integrity Game, right? Obviously, it's a love for baseball, but the integrity itself and motivation and accountability equals results. So everything that we set up into this point is kind of, this is like the climax moment of that motivation and accountability, right? So I want you to kind of talk about that, like why and how and why does this fuel you on a day-to-day basis as far as the integrity, but also the bottom line correlation between that and baseball.
Well, the baseball, it's so funny. The through line, right, is I didn't play when I was a kid. It was like a trauma or a wound for me that I had to, I got to correct my language on that. I would ride my bike to the field and I'd see all these other kids getting uniforms and getting to play and wondering why not me. So like FOMO is legit, even if you don't miss out. Fear of missing out is legit, even if you haven't missed out on anything, you can fear missing out. And I feel like I missed out on a lot. All right. And baseball is a love, and I never got to know how good I could have been, or it was just a thing, right? And so that's the psycho emo side. From the question about my parents, I wrote The Integrity Game, the book, while I was coping with my parents' loss. I went into production, I started writing it. I gave a keynote called The Integrity Game like a month-ish before my parents passed. It was during COVID. It was in a hotel room. It was a virtual keynote that I recorded and sent to them, and they played on the last day of the Specialty Advertising Association of California. And I was like, wait a second, the integrity game, it grew, right, from this dialogue in my coaching and leadership training about what we do when somebody's committed to something and they haven't done what they said they're going to do. Well, we got to play the integrity game. It was just a little dialogue. It was my name for a little dialogue, an accountability dialogue inside of the training. Then when the Specialty Advertising Association picked the integrity game from the list of topics that I gave them for the keynote, then I had to develop the keynote, and this 10-point model came together it just came out from everything I've been doing all my whole life, right? It just all of my, it's hard to explain. So part of it is I don't know. Part of the answer to your question is I don't know. I'm still figuring it out because I feel like I say part of it's not Jeff Klubeck. It's some other source, right?
Yeah.
You follow, like he uses me.com. I own that URL. He uses me.com. I bought that one time because I felt it so strongly. Right. So some of this I don't know yet. I claim not to know. I'm just going with it. Right. But I developed the 10-point model. And then part of my therapy writing the book was the integrity game is a 10-point model. So I thought, well, this sets up nice, for an opening chapter, the 10 points in a concluding chapter. So I had a vision for a 12-chapter book. And I thought, well, wait a second, what am I doing here? We're talking about integrity. We're talking about accountability. We're talking about, and most people will always feel like accountability is an attack if they're not ready to be responsible for their own behavior. And most people think integrity is be your word or do the right thing when nobody's watching. So most people have a judgmental vibration when they command their understanding of integrity. It's always looking out at the person that doesn't have any. Be your word, do what you say you're going to do the right thing regardless of who's watching, not just when certain people are watching. And most people really have an easy time seeing it's like, to me, the joke part is like parenting or driving. Somehow we're really perfect at it, but everybody else sucks. Well, integrity, accountability, same way, right? So I feel like I'm getting to your question about baseball integrity game. I feel like I'm biting off a big piece here. Like if the biggest brand promise for the integrity game, are you ready, is to make accountability non-threatening. If that's what we're trying to do. And there's more things that we could do, we're trying to do with the integrity game, but at a high level, what would happen for the individual, the team, or the culture in an organization if accountability was non-threatening? Like, what's the opposite of non-threatening? Like exciting, like people would be hopping onto accountability like a roller coaster, right? Get in line again. That was awesome. It was non-threatening. You don't think you're going to die. You're going to get on and ride. Okay. So what if we did the same thing for accountability? What would happen to our productivity? What would happen to the politics? What would happen to backstabbing and pass the bucking and crap rolling downhilling and othering and blaming and shaming and avoidance and defensive, water cooler talk? And what would happen to all of that if accountability was non-threatening? What a neat question. So if I'm right that this is a big topic, a big door I'm knocking on, a big new brand promise that hasn't been made in the marketplace, nobody else is coming for accountability like this, right? Coming for integrity, and I have to call into question everybody's sense of integrity in order to get the message through. So baseball becomes a Trojan horse, right? The book is just a parable. And so imagine now I'm dealing with the loss of my parents, who you're right, they passed away 3 weeks apart during pre-vax COVID. I was the only adult in the room. I love my brother, but he wasn't medically, financially responsible for right? I'd leave my wife, leave my kids, leave my dogs, go to Vegas, pre-vax COVID, take care of mom and dad. And that was a trauma for me. I started with the romance of it all. There was a lot of beautiful things about it, right? But it was still a trauma for me. And so in my therapeutic approach, one of my choices, instead of binge watching Netflix, I worked on the integrity game. And so there's a season ticket holder who's at the big ballpark to see his son, who just as a rookie just got called up to the big leagues. And now the scene is set, but there's this uninspired hot dog vendor who just wants to go home, doesn't want the game to get tied, doesn't want to go to extra innings. The hot dog vendor's got plans to go drink with his buddies. Well, he kind of expressed that next to the wrong dude, because the season ticket holder's like, hey, man, you're out of integrity cheering against the home team. Oh, my boss, this job sucks, blah, blah, blah. Well, you haven't sold me a hot dog. Like, you can make more money. In other words, the guy just, I bet nothing would satisfy you. I bet you complain about everything. I bet you're going to go complain about the friends you hang out with tonight. Oh, what does baseball have to do with it? What does integrity have to do with it? Oh, well, that's my kid. I'm a season ticket holder. I'll be here all season if you want to learn about integrity. And so the season ticket holder, he's a coach, he's a consultant, he helps people for a living, so he can't ignore this uninspired hot dog vendor. So obviously, I'm modeling me on the season ticket holder, but this hot dog vendor is a little bit of all of us, right? We could all identify with that person. And then my son is, the character that made the team. He's TJ, my son's AJ. There's a cotton candy salesperson named Allie, my daughter's Abby. And then there's a doctor that comes in at the end, and he didn't get to play baseball. He had something wrong with his leg and he didn't get to play. And so now that he's a doctor in his career, he's partnered, I don't want to ruin it all, but they're raising money for challenged athletes and doing charitable work. And so all three of my kids show up as hero figures or, models of integrity. And so it was therapeutic for me to go through this and, infuse memories, memoir, characteristics, qualities. So it's all Trojan horse. Like if nobody read the book, and I got hit by a bus tomorrow, my love for my kids and my dedication to my wife is alive and well in the integrity game. And so that was really important to me, to bridge the two questions of dealing with the loss of my parents and writing the integrity game. And also like my kids, they've all read it, even my little 11-year-old, he read it when he was just finishing 9 years old, and he read it and he loved it. And when he saw his nickname in the book, he was like, have you read it? Have you read it? Have you read it? And we couldn't wait till he got to the end and he saw where he showed up and how he showed up. So if nobody in the world read it, like that's just amazing for me to have that. And what ended up happening is I sent it out to like 85 people to ask them to read it before I published it. And next thing you know, I'm like, okay, this is good. It's good. I'm proud of it. And I've been building the brand around it and everything that I used to offer, coaching, consulting, training. I'm now repackaging integrity game rather than Get A Klu. I started with Get A Klu, but I think integrity game is the more longer term brand for me to work with corporations, associations. It's more scalable internally. If I want to hire, train and bring on independently contracted coaches, they don't want to be a Get A Klu coach, but they might want to be an integrity game certified coach or an integrity game certified speaker. So I've got all the IP around it, and off we go. And I got blessed because the interim dean, who's now the director of the School of Communication at San Diego State, she saw me promoting the integrity game last year, liked one of my posts. I was like, wait a second, I didn't even know that we were connected. I said, hey, I got my degrees at San Diego State. You're the dean where I got she's like, yeah, I'm familiar with your name. I want to learn more about the integrity game. So I met with her. I told her about the 10-point model. And she says, how would you like to reconnect with your alma mater? I said, well, get me in the classroom. Let's see what students think of this thing. Can I use my book to engage students and why they're really learning coming out of the zombie apocalypse where they were Zooming in their bed before they would brush their teeth? They would wake up 1 minute before class. And like, it was crazy what students had to go through coming through COVID. So can I use my book to get students engaged? Can there be a textbook version of the integrity game? And now the possibility is just wide open. I'm alive and energized by being reconnected with my alma mater, where I met my wife, where my son's going to school. And my book has been required reading in an upper division organizational communication class. So that's like pinch me type stuff. Like I had no vision for that when I was just getting over mom and dad. Yeah. But now all of a sudden this book has changed lives, and I'm really excited about its potential to keep doing that. Like soft skills for strong leaders, soft skills for strong teams, soft skills for strong organizations. And it's funny. So the baseball thing is just a Trojan horse. I just want to write, I was using Who Moved My Cheese, or, there's these parables, 1 Minute Manager, Who Moved My Cheese. That's just an approach to a book where you get a model, or you get personal professional growth content out there, but it's not diagrams and charts and statistics and a master's thesis and all of that academic talk. This is just a 135-page read about a season ticket holder, his son, an uninspired hot dog vendor who ain't slinging dogs by the end of the book. I'm not going to spoil everything, but by the end of the book, he's not slinging hot dogs anymore.
I think it's definitely phenomenal. I think you just kind of painted a picture of evolution, right? You talk about Get A Klu, and I think in that process of, like you said, losing your parents, you got a clue to kind of dive more into appreciation, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why you dedicated that book to your wife and to your kids. So I want you to kind of talk about that, or like the earlier days of Get A Klu. How has that helped you not only to grow yourself, but to grow your clients from where they were then into the integrity game today?
Yeah, there's no way around this, but like it may seem counterintuitive. Like the way you ask the question, it sets me up to talk about platitudes and lessons and breakthroughs and ahas, right? The reality is all the struggles, all the stress, the unknowns, the one thing that I can pinpoint, and it's not fun to talk about. It's not fun to look back on. It's the most fun you never want to repeat, right? But one of the things that happens to a lot of married couples is the whole whose career is more important thing. You follow? Oh, yeah. So, well, when there's children, right? Well, I have to work. Well, I have to work too. We both have to work. So, like, so in other words, one of the things that's really amazing is that work compared to parenting ain't work. Compared to parenting, work is vacation. Work is escape, right?
Yeah.
And because not being able to go to the bathroom, without the door open, so you can keep your eyes on your kid and the bodily stuff and you started on being a parent, right? So then what happens is like, well, wait, I remember watching the kid all day, AJ, and then Marianne, like at her business, like at her corporate job, staying late, like, hey, I got to go teach class at 7 p.m., 7 to 10. I'm going to go teach a class. And my wife's not home yet. What do? I can't leave the kid there in an empty house in the crib. And I'm blowing up like, hey, this is years ago, right? You know, 15, 16 years ago. Well, I guess I'm going to go teach with my son on my chest. And so put him baby Bajorn. And back then it was overhead projectors, right? So I'd walk in front of the overhead projector and cover his eyes. I was teaching classes with my son strapped on my chest, trying to build a business. Right. I developed curriculum. So I remember I would go back. One of my mentors taught me, Brian Tracy. Yeah, shout out to Brian Tracy, one of my mentors. By name, Brian Tracy. If you or anybody in your organization is listening, thank you, Brian Tracy, for everything back in the day. He says, we work 8 hours a day for survival and the rest for success. So I remember putting the kids down to bed and then going back to work at 9 p.m. and working from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m., getting my 3 hours sleep and waking up at 6. And so it's the ugly stuff that is the good stuff, is what I'm trying to say. There's nothing more important than supportive spouse. Have my spouse and I always been 100% supportive to each other? Probably not. Have we said stuff that we regret? Has there been resentment? Has there been whose career is better? Has there been who's got it covered? Have I failed to give her relief? Has she failed to give me relief? Have we been like all the mistakes, all the fits, all the frustrations? I don't know how to explain it, but it's all the good stuff. That's the stuff that makes us resilient, that makes us like, how do you dedicate the book to your wife? Why? Well, because she's been with me the entire way. It's almost no brainer, but like when you look back on it, there's a lot of people would answer that question romantically. Oh, my spouse has been with me and we've been fortunate and we learned this and when we figured this, but I'm going to be real about it. It is tough. And I don't know how else to explain it, but thank God it is. And I don't know how I'd appreciate without all the struggle. How would I keep striving? It's just, I don't know if I'm being as articulate as I want to be right now, but all of the most challenging moments of keeping a marriage together, raising kids, trying to build a business, not knowing where the money's coming from, worst economy since the Depression in 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then parents' health and weeds grow on their own, right? That's another thing that Brian Tracy taught me, is that the bad stuff, the unproductive stuff, the unhealthy stuff, the unwanted stuff, the ugly stuff, it all grows automatically. Weeds grow on their own, needs no help from us, right? The good stuff needs us, nutrients, sunlight, water, talk to trimming the plant, right? If we want the good nourishing stuff to grow, that's going to need some help from us, right? So the integrity game, come back to the integrity game, let me ask you, what happens to building a bridge or a tunnel without structural integrity?
Collapse.
When it's pressure tested.
Correct.
Well, a marriage is no different. An individual is no different. A team, a high performance team is no different. A company culture is no different. If we're not well built, well maintained, and retrofit from time to time, we can crumble too under all of these weeds that are growing on their own. To go through life expecting nothing unwanted to happen is silly. What I'd rather do is spend my life retrofitting myself so that when the unwanted happens, I'm resilient. And boy, does the unwanted happen in marriage. Boy, does the unwanted happen in parenting. Boy, does the unwanted happen when you're building a business and you cutting your teeth and making yourself vulnerable and trying, all of the risks that entrepreneurs take,
Yeah.
self-made solopreneurs that are out there marketing themselves. And so I hope that answer is making sense for your question.
Yeah, I think it totally does. I mean, and it kind of leads me into another statement that you had made about now is always the right time to expand self in business. And based
Mm.
upon what you said so far in this dialogue, is coming to be, you were not necessarily clueless, but you found a clue in that. And then from that, you kind of stemmed into this integrity game. But in the entire process, you were always willing to expand and grow, whether it was self or business or with family, collectively, no matter what was happening.
Yeah, yeah. I have to hibernate every now and then. Sometimes I just need to sit still and do nothing, you know. But I like to convince myself that even then I'm growing, if it's meditative or it's self-reflexive or if I'm centering on breathing or what have you. But I do, and I'm not proud of this per se. I have to come to terms with it. I love how it looks to others. I was having a conversation with an old friend of mine yesterday. She's like, Kluby, you're always go, go, go. You always do, do, do. I'm like, that's so crazy because it doesn't feel like that inside. Like for me, my internal voice is I'm always harping on myself in the lazy moments or the unproductive moments, or I'm always saying, hey, what can you do now? What else can you do now? What aren't you doing right now? That's the automatic voice. But what I think that comes from is like if I think it comes from scarcity, man. I think it comes from like there was times in college, my third semester in college when I moved out of the dorms and I had my first apartment for myself. First of all, in the dorms, I had two jobs in San Diego and would go home every other weekend to deliver pizzas. Right. That's right. And then my car's breaking down on the freeway in between LA and San Diego. And I'm wondering how I'm going to get to class the next morning with a broken down car on the 101 freeway. Like those are character building memories, right? But then like the next semester, right before my parents told me they couldn't afford tuition and my bosses on campus lent me money, um, I was living on 6 pieces of bread per day. I would have a mustard sandwich in the morning, a mustard sandwich in the afternoon, and a mustard sandwich in the evening. And so it doesn't take long, like it's like if I had a cigarette every day for 30 days straight, what would I want on the 31st day? If I drank alcohol every day for 30 days straight, what would I want on the 31st day? Okay. So if I don't hustle, I don't eat. And if I say that to myself for 30 days straight, what I'm going to say to myself on the 3,000th day, on the 6,000th day, on the 10,000th day, right? Like it just got burned into me that and I don't always hustle, like there's times in the business where I'm like, oh my God, the pipeline, right? I don't have a salary, I don't have a corporate, you know what I mean? Like I'm a solopreneur. Does that make sense? So like it's inconsistent. And when you look, it's like, oh, sometimes you're wondering, oh my God, how am I going to eat? How am I going to, that's real. How am I going to make payroll? Whatever it is. So I just, I just think it's just part of and I'm not always happy about it. Like I got to take the good with the bad. That's part of maturing, right? Two sides to every coin, heads and tails. So this drive that people see, this go, go, go that people see. I mean, like, it's so funny when you introduced me at the beginning, like a legend in the industry. I'm like, it sounds much different in my own head when I'm describing myself because I'm always hyper aware of what I'm not doing. So that one of the points on the integrity game model is for accomplishments, and it's to force us to smell the roses. And in addition to looking forward to what we want, it's really important to take a deep breath and like identify everything that we've accomplished to date. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and so I have to play my own game as well.
So, like, let's say that this is a game, right? And I want you to identify with just using single to maybe dual words to define who you are. And the limitation is just 3 to 5 words. What would those 3 to 5 words be for you?
Jovial, empathic, funny, but looks on everything.
I could definitely see that. I mean, obviously, it's one of those things to where if you ask someone about a superhero, right? Like some people will say Batman, some people will say Superman, And every once in a while, you'll get the random person that may say the Joker because he finds comedy in dark places, right? And it's kind of
Yeah.
like I kind of see that in you a little bit. It's like you're talking about being funny, but you've been through enough and you've been through enough dark places to see the sense of humor pretty much in anything. And again, you can correct me if my statement is right or wrong.
You're absolutely right. I say it often. I see the humor in everything. I mean, it's everywhere. Humor's everywhere. I mean, humor, because half of humor is the truth. The other half is just our twist on it, you know? So yin and yang there. So humor is everywhere as long as we're willing to twist something. Right. So that's an interesting, yeah. So I mean, like passionate, direct, wordsmith, vulnerable, loving, energetic. These are some of the words that I would choose.
Mm.
The ones what I want to be, I want people to know me as jovial. Like I am going to keep it light. I'm going to keep it fun because what we're, personal professional growth is hard enough. So there's room for joviality in this struggle, in this journey.
Mm. So to the listener, right? I mean, obviously, like indirectly, I think we've personified soft skills collectively based upon what you do through your story.
Mm-hmm.
And I want the listener to kind of get some additional insight. So besides like your Clue collection of books and besides the integrity game, what books have you read in the past 30 years that anyone that's looking to develop their soft skills should read?
Um, other than my books, I mean, this is not going to be the direct question. There's not. You got to know where it hurts first. It's the book. It's the book that addresses the pain that you want to get away from or the pleasure you want to get closer to. So I would encourage first people to really identify, like it wouldn't be enough to be like, I don't feel right. I don't feel whole. I don't feel fulfilled. I don't feel energized. So I need a book to fix that for me. You follow, like a pill. It's like, let's peel some layers and like, why don't you feel fulfilled? In what area do you not feel fulfilled? Because I might end up recommending The Road Less Traveled if it's about discipline, love, or grace, or I might end up recommending Getting Things Done by David Allen if it's about workplace productivity, or I might end up recommending Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy if it's about time management. I might end up recommending, you follow? So I think my recommendation might be willy-nilly unless I can turn it around and hold the person accountable to getting a little bit more clear on where it hurts. All right, what's the juicy carrot you want to get closer to take a bite out of? Or what happened in your last performance review that kept you from getting the raise you feel you deserve? So what skill do you need, right? And then sometimes it's maybe not even a book, maybe it's a training, because the integrity, and we've got a library of like 130 soft skill trainings that we can customize when we're delivering for clients and so forth. So what is it? Is it be a likable boss? Is it train the trainer? Is it appreciative inquiry? Is it change management? Is it civility in the workplace? Is it customer service? Is it your presentation skills? Is it how to conduct a performance review? Is it coaching and leadership? Is it personal branding? Is it, you follow? So there's what, you know what I'm saying? What's the skill? What's the skill? Where does it hurt? What's the diagnosis? Why would anybody be looking for a soft skills book in the first place? Let's answer that question. Then I'd have a better recommendation on which book, right? Now, having said that, for personal professional growth, I mentioned a couple of my favorites, right? The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck is incredible. I'm a big fan of the Getting Things Done works, because then he did Ready for Anything as well by David Allen for productivity and workplace management. I love Mindset Perspectives on Time Management and Goal Setting by Brian Tracy. So Brian Tracy, like, the Laws of Achievement, Psychology of Success, very good by Brian Tracy. I mean, just thinking about books off the top of my head, but also, what's interesting too is anything that's going to help you be kind to yourself, right? Like I read a book recently by Brene Brown that wasn't really necessarily a soft skill book, but it was like teaching you how to like not get over the blame game, the shame game, the self-loathing game. Like when you don't like something about yourself, instead of working on that and acknowledging that and making peace with that, we end up blaming and shaming and everybody else. And we're projecting. Everybody's guilty of what they accuse others of, and we're triggered by what we see in others that we really don't like about ourselves, but it's easier to blame them than look within, right? So anything that has you be kinder to yourself, anything that has you vibrating more steadily and more evenly, anything that has you sitting more upright is a great combination with like a specific tactical transactional skill set, like presentation skills. You're going to do better at presentation skills if you're not beating yourself up. You're going to do better at being a likable boss if you're not blaming and shaming. You're going to on and on and on. So anything that I don't like to build a mansion on top of quicksand. Mm-hmm. Let's put the back in foundation and understand what soft skills we're building on top of. So I want to peel some layers of the onion there.
Yeah, I think peeling back layers on this one is definitely really good. So like, let's take that and turn it into words of wisdom for the same individual that we were talking about. But I wanted to interject Robert Frost, right? The road not taken.
And the road that's traveled, yeah. I took the one that's traveled by, yeah.
So let's say they have opportunity and it's a split fork in the road, right? And I mean, based upon what you said, there's always one or the other, right? They can kind of learn from you to kind of become some kind of Trojan horse and utilize that to grow and prosper, or they can kind of just internalize everything and kind of go into their woe is me. What words of wisdom would you have someone that's at that fork in the road right
now? Worry is a waste of your imagination. Right? The hesitation to take either of those roads is going to be based on some imagination of something that could go wrong, some fear, right? But worry is just making stuff up in our head that hasn't happened yet. So there's a quote by Tom Petty in one of his songs. It says, most of the things I worry about never happen anyway. And it's easy for me to give this advice. I still do this. I still worry about things I shouldn't worry about, right? I had a recent experience of that where I was really like neurotically uber responsible about making sure I achieved this result. And I was way over thinking it from what it really deserved and ended up being fine. But if you're going to imagine stuff, imagine what you do want, right? Very simply, like, weeds grow on their own. So the automatic thoughts that are going to come up are, what do I don't want? What do I don't want? What do I don't want? Protect myself, protect myself, protect myself. But at some point, protecting ourselves runs counter to actualizing ourselves. So if I'm going to use my imagination, if I'm going to ask myself a question, I'm going to ask myself what I do want. I'm going to imagine what I do want. And with a vision, that's why goal setting is so important. If I've already set goals, the road to take is easy to choose, right? Here's what's interesting. There's another quote. If I have no destination, any road will get me there. Any road will take me nowhere. Yeah. But if I know exactly where I want to go, if I've done the hard work first, what is my purpose? What are my gifts and competitive advantages? What does that mean for my potential, vision, mission, objectives? And what do I need to achieve in the next 3 months in order to feel like I'm on my way to meeting my objectives, on my way to my mission, my vision? The road will reveal itself, right? And even if it's the wrong road, you may not know that before you take it. You may have to take a couple steps down the wrong road before you know it's the wrong road. So don't be afraid of that either, right? I've smelt the milk. It smelled bad and chosen not to drink it. You know what I mean? Have you ever tasted something that you knew was bad and then you're like, oh, that's not good. I'm not going to do that anymore. So it's developing a fearlessness that isn't. There's a great quote out there, man. Have you seen it? Like, where, oh, courage is knowing that there could be harm and going anyway. Yeah. And stupidity is the same thing. And that's the funny part, right? Like, that, linking courage and stupidity. But what I actually, for me, bravery is more the stupid thing. Bravery is the person that's all about their ego and their moxie and like, I don't care what's out there, I'm going because I'm brave. That's stupid ignorance, right? Yeah. Courage versus bravery is, you know what? That's dangerous. And I want what I want so bad that I'm going anyway. And that's the vulnerability. That's the love, So number one, goal setting will help us choose the road. Asking ourselves what we do want instead of what we don't want. Very similar. Finding a fearlessness that doesn't spill over into stupidity. And, right? Stay away from ignorance. those are some tips that come to mind, right? And there's all kinds of values, principles, that guide us, rings around our Saturn. But I'm a big fan of the integrity game, quite honestly.
Yeah.
But the integrity game is funny. It's like it's just 10. There's a 10-point model, so there's 10 sets of questions. So just if you're playing the integrity game when you answer these questions, it's as easy to understand as it is difficult to play because some of these questions are tough. Purpose, gifts, potential, right? But then playing it really well is making sure your answers to these 10 questions integrate, that they empower each other then rather than dilute or contradict each other. Like my purpose can't be to get a drug to market if my gifts are energy, timing, storytelling, communication. And if those are my gifts, I shouldn't be in a lab injecting rats with a serum and run goggles and the clipboard. So if I know what my purpose, if those are my gifts, go back to purpose, pick a new purpose then. Like, in other words, just if we have answers to 10 questions, we'll know what road, right? One of the points on the model is strategies, tactics, and resources. And if I'm allowed to use a big word here, equifinality, multiple paths to the same destination. So as a practical application, if I have a real estate agent that I'm coaching and they are a slow-paced, certainty-driven introvert, they crunched the numbers, they got the spreadsheets, right? But I've got another real estate agent who's got a behavioral style like mine, fast-paced, variety-oriented, extroverted, emotive, communicative, right? I'm not going to assign the same strategy. I'm going to say, you need to go to networking events. You need to go sponsor an event and get on stage for 2 minutes and say, thank you, I'm happy to sponsor this event. You need to go find regular places where you go, join clubs, go to industry, be around people. This other person over here, they need to get a good title rep and farm an area with the right literature, the comps, and be ready when the phone rings with all of the information, because it's different behavioral styles, right? So what do you want to achieve? Who are you? Now let's go pick a road, right? But a lot of times, what the book I'm writing right now, going to come out with my 5th book. It's Get A Klu in 52 for speakers. And when we get to this concept of strategies, tactics, and resources, a lot of people suffer from. Are you ready for this? Halitosis, right?
How to do it?
It's the bad breath of right because. So the person says, well, how? It's very simple. Well, which road do I take? Which road do I take? What do you want? If you answer this question first, you'll know, right? So the person say, well, how do I? They're not ready to take action yet. They constantly ask how to try to validate that there is no how, because as soon as there's a how, they got to take action. So the person that's got halitosis is going to stay in how to avoid taking action. The person that doesn't know what they want to achieve, doesn't know what their purpose is, doesn't know what their gifts are, doesn't know what their potential is going to have a hard time choosing a road as well.
So let's say someone that their breath is not that bad and they want to work with you. Like, where would you like to send them? Is it a particular website or a particular social media platform?
Yeah, I love being contacted on. I still respond to all of my direct messaging, so LinkedIn is a great way to reach out to me. I kind of came up in that. I'm 51 years old, so I came up in the Facebook thing. Like the younger generations, they're not on Facebook, but I am. And so Facebook is an easy way to reach me. LinkedIn is an easy way to reach me. What else? I mean, I can give you my email address if people want to send email. And by the way, for your listeners, if they want a PDF copy of the integrity game, I'll be more than happy to send out. Anybody that emails me, I'll be more than happy to send them the PDF. It's a 135-page PDF, a copy of the integrity game or any other book that we mentioned that in our interview. So directly message me through LinkedIn, Facebook, or jeff@getaklu.net would be fine. jeff@integritygame.com. All of that works.
So, I mean, obviously, I think we talked about a lot of mindset, and obviously behind mindset, believe it or not, in today's world is technology, right? So I want you to kind of talk about your use of technology and what you're doing. Well, like, what platforms do you generally use to do what you're doing at scale? And again, if you didn't have access to those platforms, would you still be able to do what you're doing?
I think the last question first. I probably would find a way to do what I was doing without the tech or the platforms that I'm using now. It would just be other platforms, right? Because if you're mission driven, you're take whether I use the telephone or Skype or right. So anyway, we're on Zoom right now. Zoom, I started using Zoom in 2014. when I wanted to, before it was cool, before COVID. But I liked it better than Skype. Why? Because I can allow the person on the other end to make their own recording. So it's just make it more efficient for me. Don't email me for a link to the thing. You remember all of that back in the day?
Man, yeah.
Yeah, right. So another platform, and this is more popular now, but I started this back in 2013, was scheduling links. Right. I've had for 10 years now. I've had my own scheduling link, and I was one of the, it was like cool when now everybody's got Calendly and whatever. There's a bunch of them out there, and it's made the world better. But you remember, how much time you used to waste? Like you'd propose 3 dates, and somebody would come back to you, and by the time they picked those 3 dates, you've already been scheduled, and all the rigmarole of it all, and just give people the link and set up automation. So that's cool. Recently, this year, I've adopted StreamYard because it allows you to stream to multiple social media channels at once, rather than like Zoom. I could stream to one platform at a time. And so one of the things that I've been doing, when you talk about platforms, the original Get A Klu in 52, here it is. You talk about the cartoon character. So I do these tips books, right? So I wrote this in 2019, but every Sunday in 2020, I would read one tip and stream it into the Facebook group that I built around it, Get A Klu in 52. Then I found all the mistakes in the book, and then came out with a better version, cleaned up, and I decided to do it again. I'm going to read tips again because I'm in a different place in my life 1 year later, right? But this time I streamed it into my YouTube channel, right? Then I wrote another Get A Klu in 52 book, Entrepreneur Edition, with co-author Vipul Dayal, one of my clients, wanted to co-author the book, so we put the project together. And then that was last year in 2022. We would, at Tuesday nights, we'd get on at 8 p.m. and read a tip into mine and stream it into my platform, stream it into my social. And then at 8:30, we'd stream it into his HMB forum group with 19 to 20,000 hoteliers. And then this year, with Get A Klu in 52 for coaches, this is the book that I'm working through this year. I've been reading one tip out of this one every week, Fridays at 9 a.m. I adopted StreamYard so that I could stream to multiple platforms. So now one broadcast, I can go to YouTube, I can go to LinkedIn, and I can go to 2 different channels on Facebook. So the group for Get A Klu in 52, as well as my Coach Jeffrey channel. So wherever people may be following, and I may be able to even expand beyond that. So that's another piece of technology. I'll tell you what, saying yes to the opportunity to teach at San Diego State is probably one of the biggest platform moves I've made, because I've got a university and I could be of significant influence. Talk about the resources that are right at my fingertips, and just go down the hall this way, go down the hall that way, walk over to this building, walk over to that building. So I'm so excited about the academic side of Integrity Game. I have ideas already for a textbook version of the Integrity Game that can follow me to whatever class I teach, and use the Integrity Game, the story, the 10-point model, get learners engaged in what they're doing, and then just add the course content thereafter. So there's always an engagement piece. Why are you taking this course? Who are you? I want to know. Other professors may not, but I do. So interacting with other professors and other disciplines, and bringing guest speakers. Last semester, in my COM 406 class, I had over 20 guest speakers come into my classrooms, for all of the different topics, and I was blessed and to flaunt my network and, and share that resource. And the speakers, they were so happy to say that they affiliated with San Diego State. And my students were so happy that I wasn't so textbook centered and theoretical, but more, hey, LinkedIn connections, and this is how networking works. And now my students have 20 new LinkedIn connections that are established, and they all know me. So there's, no Aztec left behind, and you're building communities. So I can keep going on and on and on and on about how rich the platform is at San Diego State, to be a professor there and to do Zooms there, or just to wear San Diego State gear every day and affiliate with my alma mater. And it's a really big identity piece for who I am. It's like I've been accused of being authentic before. Now I get to really be myself. Like, I'm an Aztec. This is the greatest, right? So there's tech platforms, there's physical locations. I'll tell you another thing that's worked out for me really well is the University Club downtown here in San Diego. It's a business club, and it's connected to what used to be called Club Corp. Now they're called Invite, I think. But basically all of the business clubs, and there's country clubs and there's business clubs that are tethered into this corporate situation. So it's like you pay the monthly fee, and then when you go and you eat there's food, and there's conference rooms, and there's meetings, and there's networking events, etc. But that was one of the best decisions I made in my career when I was coming up. because I think a lot of people out there have the experience of like the bottom feeding networking events. No offense to anybody, but you know what I'm talking about. I don't need to elaborate. I saw your face. I don't need to elaborate. You know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
I definitely know what you're talking about.
Okay, so when I joined the business club, I was nervous. I don't know how long I can afford this. I don't know how many months I'm going to be able to afford to pay for a membership. I know I'm good for a couple months. And here I am 12 years later. I've been a member for 12 years. And now like during COVID, I golfed, and at all the clubs. Golfing is one thing you could do during COVID, which is really helpful mentally. And so, but just the contacts, the relationships, but also meeting people there. Like it's the difference between having somebody come up to the 34th floor of the tallest building in San Diego versus a Starbucks off the freeway is a different message, for the type of business you want to do and the type of, like how you invest in yourself and how you want to surround yourself. So there's a great book back in the 70s, I think it's called Winning by Intimidation. I don't necessarily like the word intimidation. What he meant was by like impressions, like be very careful about your trappings, your surroundings, what's the impression. You got to stay authentic. You got to be true. Be suspicious of, you see them out there. There's so many people that speak like a guru from the front of the stage, but behind stage they don't do what even they say on stage, or their business on the back end is in shambles. That's why I don't call Integrity Game or Get a Clue a business. I'm just very honest about this. Like, it was an income earning hobby. I barely got it to thriving practice, but I got a ways to go before it's like a business employing people with salary. So I try to just keep it real. And so the University Club has been good. San Diego State is really incredibly wonderful right now, and it's just getting started. But as far as tech is concerned, getting your scheduling link, having good online meeting platforms that allow you to stream into social media platforms, those are a couple of things that come to mind.
So I want to ask you a question, and it kind of is in regards to both your parents, and
Mm-hmm.
you've had a multiple different levels of achievement, right? And considering that your parents were here for up until about 3 years ago,
Yeah.
considering the last 3 years, you've expanded, you've grown, your kids have grown. What if you had an opportunity to talk to them? What would be your greatest achievement that you would like to recite to them today?
The single greatest?
Yeah, outside of the kids, outside of your marriage.
Oh, shoot. Outside of the kids and outside of the marriage. Because, that's it. The greatest achievements are that I'm still married. That's an achievement. And then two, that our kids are healthy and thriving. I mean, like for my dad, I would just say, hey, Dad, AJ got a scholarship to play baseball. For mom, I would say, hey, Mom, Abigail tested out of high school and has a Hollywood agent, But for me, the Integrity Game, got to #1 on Amazon. I'm a #1 best-selling author. I worked hard at that, and there's a lot of love behind that. Like, if I could talk to them today and knowing that they'd go away after this one conversation, like they're still dead, right? I just get to talk to them today and they go back to being dead afterwards.
Correct.
I'd say, hey, guess what? The book I wrote when I was coping with your loss went to #1. And you raised a good kid.
Wow. So let's talk about like the hierarchy. There's always another level. And even with you, you've had mentors. If you had an opportunity to sit down with anyone, right, for 24 hours, it could be someone that you've met, not met, someone that's dead, someone that's alive. It really doesn't matter. But you get to sit down with that person uninterrupted for 24 hours. Who would it be and why?
That's so difficult, man. He's like,
Yeah,
have you ever like jammed your finger and it puffs up and you have to like drill a hole in your nail to release the blood to the tension? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I've been there. I know
Okay.
exactly what you're talking about.
Okay. Well, I feel like all the blood is rushing to my head right now with all of these figures throughout history that I'd like to spend time with, man. And so I want to talk to you again next week to tell you what my different answer is, and talk to you again in 2 weeks and tell you what my different answer
Yeah.
is. Right. Um, but I'll just go with first thing that came to mind is Socrates.
Wow.
Like I joke with my students when we teach persuasion.
Mhm.
When we teach persuasion, we got to introduce the father of persuasion, is Aristotle. Logos, ethos, pathos.
Mhm.
And I always joke with my students that I believe that back in the day, I was drinking buddies with Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates. But Socrates comes to mind. I mean, from there, Einstein. um, I mean, I could keep going. Like there's, man, if I thought I could make a difference with homie in 24 hours, I would spend him with Hitler and try to change the course of that dude's life. You know what I'm saying? Like if I thought 24 hours is enough to like stop that dude, then that would be my choice. You thought like, so it's very, very, very powerful question, but Socrates, just, the power of questions, questions, questions. We just keep asking questions all the time. Just keep asking questions and learn how to ask better questions and ask more questions and question the questions and keep thinking critically and keep asking questions and keep wondering how we know and what we know and how do we know what we know and what do we know and are we sure and how do you know? And staying curious and sharpening the skill set of curiosity through question asking. Power of question asking is the path to learning. A brain cannot hear a question without trying to answer it. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen a baseball melt on a hot summer day? See? Of course not, but you still tried to answer the question. Anything in question form, our brain's going to go, oh, well, of course not. Of course you've never seen a baseball melt, but your brain still went into question answering mode, right? So I think Socrates, who kind of earned, I think, history's greatest reputation for question asking and the value and the power of questions, is somebody that comes immediately to mind for me.
I could definitely see you and Socrates sitting down, sipping on lubrication. So I can see it going along.
That's right. Little lubrication, get it done for sure. Then uninhibited answers. Right?
Yeah. So going into closing, man, I like to give whoever I'm interviewing an opportunity to become the host of Boss Uncaged. So now the show is yours and I'm your guest. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah. Where, or not where, I don't want to go like like a qualitative. How has this show fit in with, stood out from? How does this show that this conversation that we've just had, how does it integrate with the ecosystem of shows that you've done and the collective?
I think that obviously you're a unique individual in comparison to other people that I've interviewed. You have a level of pizzazz. You know what I'm saying? Like you speak on stages, so you have that charisma to you. But I also think that you're probably highly, highly authentic, and that's one thing that you're going to bring your true self no matter what environment you're in collectively. Period.
Yeah, in from a messaging standpoint or nuggets or takeaways from podcasts, right? With show notes, summaries, check out the highlights. What are some of the favorite like nuggets, pieces of info, insights that have emerged prior to today's show that you can off the top of your head, like, oh, show number 13, this one, or show, you don't even have to name the specific show, but what are 2 or 3 key takeaways that your audience had already gotten before today's show?
Yeah. I would say the collective, in addition to this show, it's always remembering what really matters the most. Like business is great, winning is great, success is great, but essentially all of us as entrepreneurs and business owners, we're all doing that to have some kind of freedom and freedom for our family. So the family is the central focus collectively, no matter how far up the food chain you get.
Yeah. I know I'm supposed to be interviewing you now as the tables have turned, but I can't go further without complimenting the level of research you did about me and my background, my family, what matters most. The amount of references to my family is unparalleled from any other podcast. And I've been on dozens, you know what I'm saying? And so I just want to acknowledge you really touched my heart with that level of research and that command that you had of what's really going on all around me. So I want to thank you for that. And then if I have one more question for you, as these tables have been turned, building off of nuggets that have come out, takeaways that have been prevalent for your audience prior to today. Now, if I may ask, what are some of today's nuggets? What are you, from your experience today, what stands out as what listeners should be listening for, what people can take away from our conversation today?
I think one of the most profound things that you said was the reference to baseball was a Trojan horse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that anyone everyone has a Trojan horse. They just may not see it that way. They may use it every day. They may be around it. They may be in love with it, but they don't see the opportunity to use that object as an infiltrator to progress forward. And again, you
Mm-hmm.
kind of identified that 100%. You've engulfed it. It's to the point to where AJ is the show. I mean, he's baseball through and through. So you took it from your generation and then bled into the next generation. So I would say that your baseball reference as a Trojan horse is living from legacy to legacy for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, I appreciate hearing that. And for your audience members that I don't know if you're referring to the same type of thing, but let me say it. Everybody's got a book inside of them, right?
Yeah,
Problem
definitely.
is most people die with the book still inside of them.
Unfortunately, yes.
So if for your listeners out there, if anybody is interested in one or two complimentary sessions with
Mm.
me on their gift, their genius, what their Trojan horse could be for this book that needs to get out of them and into the world, I'd be more than happy to talk with anybody that doesn't want to die with their book inside.
Yeah, I think that's a hell of a thing to put out there on the table, and it's something that I like practicing and preaching it. Right? It's like once you write one book, then you write your second book, and you write and then it gets to the point to where the books become something like second nature to you. The fear goes away, whether people buy it or not. It kind of becomes therapy to a certain extent.
You used to, before you write one, all you see is what's in the way of writing one.
Mm-hmm.
After you write one, all you see is how easy it's going to be to write the next one. It's
100%.
it's you hear about that, but then once you go through it, it's like I can't, I don't have enough time to write all the books I see. I see the world through
Yeah.
books now. And I plus also my experience as a public speaking instructor, I got years and years and years of students coming up to me and saying, I don't know what to do my speech on. So I help them with a topic, break it down into main points, break it down into sub points. So when it comes to organizing thoughts or curricularizing content,
Mhm.
I'm really good at that stuff. I try to play humble, but I'm really good at categorically organizing thoughts into logical relationships. And all of my Get A Klu in 52 books, they all have 5 categories that have a logical relationship, and the tips come out through 5 categories. So like I love curricularizing. I love brainstorming with people. I've been flown around the world to help people get their speeches together when they didn't know what they were going to speak about. I'm out, so I love working with people on content and getting their intellectual property or their professional equity packaged, curricularized so that they can, really go to next levels. And I don't like to be cliche about next levels, right? Like, what's the next level? Like, can you be a little more specific? Like, these vagaries that people throw out there, but you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that the point about books is definitely something. Because to your point, I've written 10 books in my life so far.
Okay.
Your point, I have probably at least 200 books in my
In your head. Mm-hmm.
in my mind of like, okay, if I stop everything, maybe I can get a fraction of that done in this period of time. But there's so many different things to do. But to your point, you constantly got to keep writing, constantly keep putting those books out there, even if it's only 1 or 2 books per year.
Maybe you and I could collaborate on a book. Maybe, I think it would be an interesting project because,
Yeah. I can see
yeah, yeah, let's talk offline about that, and let's tease your listeners' appetite for what you and I 1 + 1 = 3, right? We get along so
yeah,
well. This is
yeah.
wonderful, and we'd hit the ground running. So I do have some more work to do to learn more about the books that you've written. But whatever our next conversation is, if we have that one, I'll be ready for it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think today was definitely a hell of a show, a hell of an episode. I think, bringing baseball and unarming it and realizing what a baseball really symbolizes for you is definitely something that's phenomenal for the listener. And hopefully they'll take you up on your offer and find their Trojan horse sooner than later.
Yeah, I had to miss out on playing in order to get my kid to D1, like
Yeah.
it's just the way it works. It's beautiful. You've done a great job with me today. I'm really grateful that I was able to guest on this program, and this is a relationship I'm committed to continue investing in.
Yeah, so am I as well, man. And I think again for the listener, this is an episode that the first time you hear it, it's okay. The second time you listen to it, the third time, the fourth time, this is an episode you have to listen to multiple times to kind of get all the frequencies and all the little details and nuances that were uncovered today. So I definitely appreciate you bringing that level of authority to this podcast today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. Absolutely. And you can probably imagine that you ever want me back, there's probably all kinds of other stuff we haven't even talked about that we can get to as well. But it's been a great pleasure. You've done an amazing job. It's I consider it an honor to be here.
Well, pleasure is mine. And with that, S.A. Grant, over and out.